Hi, I'm Sue Hillyard, and I've been studying astrology since my late teens. My influences are eclectic, and there's always more to learn. I've been attending Zoom meetings since Linda started them. This past summer, we had a number of meetings about the eclipses, which really piqued my interest. After Gemini Brett did his talk mentioning that a series of eclipses will activate planets that are 11 degrees apart, all of my progressed Scorpio urged me to dig deeper into this huge topic, and today I'll present what I found. And since we're right now exactly halfway between seasons, at the bendings, it seems like a perfect time to talk about eclipses. So my topic is Saros cycles and eclipse families. And one comment before I begin, being a visual learner, it's very hard for me to absorb information that I hear. So figuring that there may be others like me, I've prepared lots of visual information that I will also talk through. Okay, here we go. Next slide, please, Linda. Here's what we'll cover: eclipse mechanics, eclipse types, Eclipse Seasons, Saros cycles, Metonic series, and I'll give some chart examples, and then I'll talk about the bendings. Okay, next slide, please. Here's a very basic depiction of how a solar eclipse occurs. The moon goes between the sun and earth at a new moon solar eclipse, and the earth would be over here in between the sun and moon at a full moon lunar eclipse. Next slide. Here are some references for you. I used Moonblink, Wikipedia, and NASA.gov to gather data about the eclipse cycles that I'll present. Astro.com has the Mountain Astrologer articles on eclipses and the bendings. Bernadette Brady's book for identifying which eclipses occurred in what year and what series they were in. And Brian Brewer's book isn't about astrology, but it did give me statistics about the types of eclipses. And there are many EA, Zoom, and YouTube videos that you can watch to get more information about many topics, including eclipses, and particularly the eclipse videos from last summer by Dawn Cerise, Kathy Gorla-Lindsay, Rose Marcus, and Gemini Brett Joseph. So here's a screenshot of Moonblink. This is the site that Brett introduced us to. You can query the database by year of eclipse, the type, solar, lunar, and the type, any UT date, the particular Saros series right here, and then the eclipse magnitude, duration, etc. It's a great site, and it's got a lot of useful information. This graphic shows the proportion of solar eclipse types, which I was surprised to see are pretty evenly divided, especially when you add the number of annular total to total. Annular total is a type of total eclipse where there's an annulus, or a ring around the sun. This image here in the center is of what's called the diamond ring annular eclipse. On the left over here is a partial, and this one over here is a total. Bernadette Brady has her own solar Saros naming convention, different from NASA's, and includes lunar eclipses with the solar series. Her book, Predictive Astrology, The Eagle and the Lark, contains a chapter titled Eclipses in the Saros Cycle, as well as appendices detailing all of the series that were active when she wrote the book. 3 appendices list eclipses by Saros cycle, year, and degree of the zodiac. It also has an interesting interpretation of the birth chart of each Saros series that she has included. Another useful appendix in the book lists the outer planet conjunctions between 1900 and 2048. We can go on to the next one. According to Brady, And these are the orbs of the moon that prescribe a solar eclipse. If it occurs between about 18.5 degrees of either node, it can be a partial. If it's between 0 and almost 10 degrees of a node, it must be a total solar eclipse. A partial solar eclipse occurs when the center of the moon's shadow misses the Earth. For example, at the maximum point of the Great American Eclipse this past August of 2017, the penumbral shadow spanned from Panama all the way to Greenland, covering North America, Central America, and large parts of the northern polar regions. And the next slide, these are orbs for a lunar eclipse to occur, and they're smaller than for solar eclipses. If a full moon occurs within 12.25 degrees of either node, then it can be a partial lunar eclipse. And if a full moon occurs within 0.5 degree and 3.75 degree of either node, then it must be a total lunar eclipse. And the next slide, Saros cycles. From Wikipedia, the earliest discovered historical record of what is known as the Saros is by Chaldean astronomers in the last several centuries BC. It was later known by Ptolemy and was applied to the eclipse cycle by Edmund Halley in 1691. It is a period of approximately 223 synodic months, approximately 6,585 days, or 18 years, 11 days, and 8 hours, that can be used to predict eclipses of the sun and moon. One Saros period after an eclipse, the sun, earth, and moon return to approximately the same relative geometry. A near straight line and a nearly identical eclipse will occur in what is referred to as an eclipse cycle. So a Saros cycle is a sequence of solar eclipses that occur at either the moon's ascending or descending node, the same node for each eclipse in the series. They are connected by time in that they are 18 years, 11 days, and 8 hours apart. From NASA.gov, each Saros cycle lasts approximately 12 to 1,300 years. It starts close to one of the Earth's poles and ends near the other. If the first eclipse of a series occurs at the moon's descending node, the moon's umbral shadow will pass approximately 3,500 kilometers below Earth, and a partial eclipse will be visible from the south polar region. The Saros series will end a dozen or more centuries after it began at the opposite pole. Eclipse proximity to nodes changes as the series progresses, getting closer or farther away, depending on where it is in the cycle. Successive eclipses in a Saros cycle are 11 degrees later in the zodiac. Next slide. Every year we have 2 eclipse seasons as the sun crosses over the nodal axis, once each over the north and south node. As we saw previously, an eclipse can occur when the sun moves within an 18.5 degree orb of either node. During this period, 1, 2, or 3 new or full moons will be eclipses. Eclipse season is about 36 days long. Next slide. Next year's August eclipse season will have 2 partial solar eclipses and 1 lunar. When there are 2 of one kind of eclipse in a season, they are of different series. One series is ending while another is beginning. An eclipse occurs at one side of the node and then the other one on the other side. The 2 Saros series may overlap for a few cycles. The transiting nodes take 18 months to go through each sign, moving backwards about 10 degrees in 6 months. So a subsequent eclipse season 6 months later will occur about 10 degrees earlier in the zodiac than the last one. Okay, now let's talk about the 2018 eclipses with the North Node in Leo and the South Node in Aquarius. We have 5 eclipses next year, each from a different Saros series. For solar eclipses, odd Saros are at the north node, even ones are on the south node. And lunar eclipses are the opposite. Odd Saros are at the south node, even ones are on the north node. Brady's Saros series were only the active ones at the time she wrote her book, and the naming convention includes the node that it occurred on. An NA in this column indicates that she doesn't have a convention for naming lunar eclipses, as she includes them with solar series of that season. The eclipses in February are all on the south node. August ones are with the north node. The asterisk here is to point out that we have 2 overlapping cycles in this season. Saros cycle number 117 began in 792 AD and will end 2 cycles after this one on August 3rd, 2054, with a marginal eclipse covering just 7% of the sun. The first event in 1928 of Saros cycle number 155, which Brady calls 2 New North, was a partial eclipse covering only 4% of the sun at its maximum. The longest total eclipse in this 2 New North series, 155, is of 4 minutes and 5 seconds, and it will be in the year 2162, and that will be about the middle of this series. The solar eclipse on August 11, 2018 is the 6th of 71 in this series. It will be a partial eclipse covering 74% of the sun at its maximum and will fall 9 minutes away from my Pluto, right here. The solar eclipse on July 12, 2018 is at the north node and will be a small partial eclipse visible from a patch of ocean between Australia and Antarctica. As just 34% of the sun will be covered for viewers closest to the center, Moonblink notes that this will be of limited interest. However, looking at the chart on the next slide, this antepenultimate solar eclipse, which is a fancy word for the eclipse before the next to last, in Saros Series 117 on 7/12/2018, is over here at 20 degrees Cancer 51, opposite Pluto at 20 degrees even in Capricorn. It's just the eclipse over here, new moon eclipse, is just about as far away from the north node as it can be and still be an eclipse at 15 degrees and 12 minutes from the node in Leo at 5 Leo 53, and is exactly conjunct the north node of Pluto right here at 2033. And opposite Pluto, which is conjunct its own south node, and also conjunct the south node of Saturn and Black Moon Lilith. I also noticed that the nodes of Pluto are exactly opposite each other at 2033 Capricorn and 2033 Cancer. So what might this mean from an evolutionary perspective? Well, I'm hoping for the beginning of the end for the lower vibration Capricornian fear, oppression, and isolation in favor of evolved Cancerian sharing, caring, and inclusion. But I'm curious if anybody else has any ideas on this.
Hi, Sue, it's Linda.
Hi, Linda.
Yeah, well, this solar eclipse, partial solar solar eclipse next year in July will take place on my moon, exactly on my moon in Cancer.
Yeah.
And I've considered this before because the north node of Pluto is there. And the
Right.
way I see it is, it's like a blending of the egocentric structure with the soul. And it's like the egocentric structure helps the soul to evolve, and the soul itself helps the egocentric structure to evolve. And it's like really getting to know who we really are as souls and aligning with that. What do you think, Sue?
I think that's great. Yeah, I think that's awesome.
Yeah. Anyone else?
Dawn?
My moon too, so I'm pretty excited.
Yeah, and what I thought was very interesting is that it's very near the end of this series. I mean, this series is ending up in, you know, it's only got like one or two more events to go, so it's like a transition out of the past and into the future.
It's like super concentrated juice, right?
Yeah, I think so. Although I found it funny that Moonblink said it was a marginal, you know, a mean nothing eclipse. So we'll see.
Hey Sue, does it mean anything if the planet is in retrograde when there's an eclipse?
If you mean if one of the planets, yeah, I mean the whole chart as a whole is you can take into account. But you mean that Pluto's in retrograde? Yeah.
Yeah, like what's the significance? Like, okay, so we're eclipsing on a retrograde planet, so it's really gonna be like,
yeah, a redo.
Yeah.
A redo. You know. I just it's revisiting. I think it's revisiting all of this shadow Capricornian stuff that's coming up, and hopefully, you know, turning the corner and moving into Cancer. We'll see.
Yeah, that's really interesting, this eclipse too, because they're both ruled by Cancer, and like look at the North Node too. So I mean the South Node and Mars. So it's like really looks like very powerful.
Releasing the old.
Yeah, that's what I hope.
And still also balancing the anima and animus.
Yeah.
And the roles of the feminine and the masculine, where the masculine is becoming more feminine and the feminine is becoming a bit more masculine.
Yes.
In order to balance. So that's a great opportunity for that next year.
Yeah.
It's right on my Venus.
Yay! Yes. It affects all of us for sure. Okay, let's talk about Metonic series. So the next slide. The Metonic eclipse series is one that repeats every 19 years. It consists of 4 or 5 eclipses. Eclipses in a Metonic series occur on about the same date, exactly 19 years apart, and they will be near the same degree of zodiac. I'll show some examples in a bit how Metonic and Saros series are related. After a given solar eclipse, 9 years and 5.5 days later, or a half Saros, an eclipse will occur that is lunar instead of solar. The sun will be 5.5 degrees later. For example, 9 years plus 5.5 days after next summer's August 11th solar eclipse on 18 Leo 42, there will be a lunar eclipse on August 16th, 2027 at 24 Aquarius 12, exactly 5.5 degrees later, and 9 years. Bernadette Brady postulated that the lunar eclipse series are born at the height of the solar series, when the solar eclipses are occurring closest to the nodes. So does anybody have any questions so far? If not, we can go on to the next slide. So this table shows eclipses in Saros Family 145. All of these eclipses occur near the North Node, as indicated up here. The solid line is around this past summer's dubbed Great American Eclipse. And the dashed line is the previous one in the Saros series. Saros cycle 145 originated at the North Pole on January 4th, 1689, ends in 3009, and each successive eclipse is closer to the node as they occur nearer to the equator. Then they move past the node, going toward the South Pole. The August eclipse was plus 4 degrees and 49 minutes, so that it was ahead of the North Node by that much. And then the next one in 2035 in this series will be plus 3 degrees 59 minutes, or almost a degree closer to the node. You can see that the eclipses in this series occur approximately every 18 years and 11 days. So each eclipse 18 years later is just about 11 degrees further in the zodiac than the previous one. The color coding over here refers to activations in my chart. This 99 eclipse here was within 12 minutes of my Pluto. And on the next slide is Saros Series 155. Again, on the North Node. The solid line is around next summer's August solar eclipse. And the dashed line shows the following one in Saros Series 155. These are the same degrees activated by Saros Series 145, 18 years, 11 days apart. This Saros series just began in 1928, originating at the North Pole on June 17th, 1928. So these eclipses are much farther from the nodes than Saros Series 145 was. For these two, at plus 12 degrees and 48 minutes and plus 12 degrees and 3 minutes. The eclipse of August 11th, 2019 falls 9 minutes away from my Pluto. On the next slide is I combined Saros Series 145 and 155 together so you can see the connection between them. The eclipse of Saros Series 145 on August 11th, 1999, this one right up here, is the same degree as the one that will be August 11th, 2018, 1842 Leo, 1821 Leo, the same date, August 11th, 19 years apart. And this one, this past August here at 29 degrees Leo will be the same place, 29 degrees Leo, at the on the same date, August 21st in 2036, 19 years after the one last summer. You can also see from the color-coded entries over here that I have planets that are 11 degrees apart, so successive eclipses in each cycle activate the next point in my chart. So it goes Pluto, then Jupiter, then the Sun, Saturn, and then this one, Pluto, Jupiter, and Sun. And then the next slide is shows Saros Series 140 and 150, which are even numbered Saros series, which are on the South Node. and thus originated at the South Pole, but they are also in proximity to the same planets in my chart, again, color-coded here to show the connections. The eclipse in Series 140 in 1999 will be the same, will be activating the same place, 27 Aquarius 08, exactly the same to the minute even, on this, in this coming February 2018 eclipse in series number 150. And it's opposite this, the eclipse this past summer, the Great American Eclipse. And the one here in Pisces this past February 26th at 8 degrees Pisces 12, same place as this one that will be in same day, February 26th, 8 degrees Pisces 10, opposite my sun. So we have series on both, on opposite nodes activating the same areas, all within 3 degrees of the planets and some much closer. And I found it interesting that these Saros series numbers are 5 apart, 140, 145, 150, 155, with eclipses occurring at the opposite node 6 months apart. Okay, on the next slide, there's a lot of information, but hopefully I can make sense of it pretty quickly. This is my chart with planets circled that are approximately 10 to 12 degrees stair steps apart, which then match up with the eclipses in series that have an 11-degree increment. Pluto and Jupiter are a little bit wider, but natally Jupiter was retrograde, and by progression it moved back into Aquarius and has slid very nicely into the 11-degree pattern, so it gets activated regularly with these. These eclipses periodically, rhythmically touch each planet in the chart that is separated by approximately an 11-degree margin. I also color-coded the eclipses to the planets to visually help me make sense of what was activating what. I've combined Saros Series 125, 135, 145, and 155, which gives me a Saros family that has contributed several Metonic series of eclipses, catalyzing events in my life. The list of activations by each series is in the upper left-hand corner in this light red box. And these Metonic series are illustrated by the colored boxes down here corresponding to the circled planets here. So what all this research has clearly shown me is that there have been 4 very distinct time divisions in my life so far, all about 18 years apart. Each has been defined by a series of eclipses meandering methodically over my chart and revolves around a pretty exact eclipse that was conjunct my Pluto here at 18 Leo 33. The years around 1961, 1980, 1999 have all been pivotal in sending me in a new direction and on with my evolution. And 2018 certainly looks like it will as well. The activations of these Saros series started with Pluto here in 1961. Then Jupiter was added to the mix up here in 1979. In 1997, the Sun jumped in to the mix. And recently Saturn in 2015, and eventually Mercury will join the party in 2033. And then on the next slide, I've combined the South Node Saros series 120, 130, 140, and 150 laid out the same way. Interestingly, these activations started with Jupiter first up here. I don't know if you guys can see it, but up here, this was in 1961 on the North Node, about a year, I think, before this one. And then Pluto, then the Moon and Sun in 1979, Saturn in 1997, and the North Node in 2015. In July of 1960, I was almost 10 when my family moved from a small town in Massachusetts to Phoenix in the dead of summer. I have very few memories of my younger years, as my Cancer ascendant was likely traumatized by the move and forced into survival mode by the eclipses over Pluto here in the second house. But I do believe the activation first of Pluto up, or of Jupiter up here in the ninth, provided me with guardian angels and or guides from the past to help me through. And then with this eclipse up here of 2015 on my North Node, a transiting nodal reverse, and the eclipse on the transiting South Node, I entered into a progressed balsamic phase of my Sun and Moon. In preparation for the progressed new moon this past June, astrology has helped me go back over my life, back to the past, in order to move forward into the future. I found it quite remarkable that these two Saros series of eclipses, one on the North Node and one on the South Node, have contributed so succinctly to my evolution up to this point. Each section, delineated by Pluto, perhaps represents one act of the 5-act play that is my life. Act 1 would have been from birth to the first eclipse on Pluto. Acts 2, 3, 4, and 5 follow after each successive eclipse on Pluto. The activations of planets 11 degrees hence add progressively to the story. And on the next slide, this chart combines all of the eclipse series on both nodes starting in 1961. I consider Act 1 up here to be before the first eclipse on Pluto. Activation of Act 2 was moving across country in 1960, starting in a new school and making all new friends, many of whom are still in my life today. The beginning of Act 3 coincided with my first Saturn return. Around in here. A long-term relationship ended. I moved to Santa Barbara in 1979, where I lived for 22 years until 2002. Got my first real job working for the post office in 1982, which gave me security, but didn't feed my soul. I believe that as a result of not being on my soul's path within the first year of working there, I sustained a back injury that has defined my entire life. And coincidentally, it was 35 years ago yesterday. After 10 miserable years at the post office, I finally went out on work comp and began the process of retraining myself for a career in IT. And along the way, also earned a degree in art. The beginning of Act 4 was clearly delineated by the completion of my education and beginning a career in IT for a network of community banks, which was great for a number of years until it no longer was. One day I heard myself say, "I hate my job." Although it surprised me to hear myself say this, I knew that things had changed so much in the world, and especially for financial institutions, that I was no longer happy working for the man. I also saw the writing on the wall that this bank was in trouble and would probably not make it out alive after its own Chiron return. So in about 2010, I began to prepare for the eventuality that I would be let go by exploring the things that made my soul sing: astrology, Reiki, past life regression. Over the next few years, I completed training in all of these areas, as well as a Women's Economic Ventures program for starting a business in 2013. That same year, the inevitable happened, and I was laid off from the job I'd held for the previous 16 years. I was now free to follow my heart's desires. I floundered for a while, not knowing how to move ahead. Symbolically, I fractured my left leg almost exactly 4 years ago. That would be in a few days. And spent the next 6 months to a year recovering from that. In 2015, during a reverse nodal return, another one, the same one actually, after this eclipse point up here, conjunct my north node and opposite my Mercury, which is the ruler of my Virgo south node, I rediscovered the EA forum and saw Linda's post about starting a Facebook EA study group, which I jumped into with both feet and haven't looked back. That same year, 3 days before this eclipse, conjunct my Saturn, my canine partner of 13 years died on his 14th birthday. My favorite feline at that time, Slate, had preceded Spencer to the spirit world a month prior, and since then I've lost 6 more feline friends, as well as a few human ones. Did I mention that my recent progressed new moon was in Scorpio, along with progressed Venus, Mercury, and natal Mars? All this Scorpio activation has been in my 5th house, square natal Venus and Pluto in Leo. The past few years have been rough at times, but I can definitely say I've learned much and grown considerably. One of the best parts to come out of my grief was learning printmaking and memorializing many of my deceased animals and art. So here I go again, creatively making my way through another transformation, skillfully guided by the cosmos into Act 5. Down here. Notice how the Eclipse series weave together, overlapping one another, alternating nodes. So you got south node, north node, south node, north node, and 120, 125, 130, 135, 140, 145. And Act 4 had all of these series, 120 all the way through 150. And then the transaction to Act 5 brings in Saros Series 155. And that will be the one that is here, conjunct my Pluto, next August 11th. This has been a story about me, since after all, I do have Venus conjunct Pluto in Leo, but all of my Virgo hopes that I have provided enough information about these series that you can apply to yourself and will prompt you to do research into the Saros series and Metonic eclipses that have bearing on your chart. And then please reach out to me if I can help in any way, because this was a project doing, you know, all of this research and making sense of it. And when I discovered, oh wow, this is how the Saros series create, or you know, how the Metonic series come out of the Saros series, I went, I have to share this. So let me show you quickly how I found this, and then I'll talk about the bending. So the next slide shows the all of the Pluto Metonic series, with each eclipse very close to the degree of my Pluto here, including one long before I was born in 1942, but this is the complete 5 eclipses in the Metonic series. Same degree, 19 years apart, pretty much the same day. But check out the proximity to the nodes over the series. It starts out minus 15 degrees and 28 minutes and ends with plus 12 degrees, 48 minutes. And the one in 1961, this one here that I've got circled, was exactly to the minute conjunct my Pluto, although it was 8 degrees and 37 minutes behind the node. The one in 1980 was closer at just under 2 degrees. And then it passed over, and then they're on the other side of the node at plus 5 and plus 12. Then the next slide is also a series in the one before that, Linda. Oh no, I'm sorry, this is right. The these are the other series in Leo, closer to the nodes, but further away from the planet that it was affecting, which is for me was my Jupiter. It was opposite my Jupiter. But you can see that again, it starts out minus 9 degrees, minus 2 degrees, and then switches over the node and is ahead of it by 4 degrees, and then it will end, and the last eclipse will end at 12 degrees and 3 minutes past it on August 21st, 2036. And all of these, again, are on August 21st or 22nd. And the series 125, 135, 145, 155. And then the next slide are the Virgo series, conjunct my sun. And these were evenly minus 10, plus 10 on the other side, minus 3, plus 3, 59, so close. And evenly, perfectly Virgo in proximity to my sun, less than 2 degrees. You can see that each one of these Metonic series are made up of an eclipse from each one of the Saros series, one from 125, one from 135, one from 145, one from 155. And then the first Leo one also had a one from 115, which the series ended with that eclipse. And then the last one is the Metonic series on my Saturn. And this one, I only listed 3 that are in the even plausible span of my lifetime, although this 2053 may be pushing it a little. And there is another one in this series that is in 2072 that my guess is it would be probably 10 degrees past the node. So it would be down here at plus 10 something, probably between 10 and 11 degrees in the node. Okay, let's move on and talk a little bit about the bendings. The next slide, according to Kathy Allan in her article from the Mountain Astrologer, this refers to the 2 points square the nodal axis, signifying the solstice turning points of the moon in the nodal cycle, and have long been considered to be critical, challenging, and dangerous. And she was quoting from Lehman in 1996. Since the nodes generally move retrograde, going in a clockwise direction, starting from the north node, the opening square is the south bending, and the closing square, 270 degrees from the north node, is the north bending. And more from Kathy Allan, the north bending is analogous to Cancer, which coincides with the northern hemisphere summer solstice, when the sun is closest to the earth and the land is burgeoning with solar light and color. It is a time of physical outflowering. We might expect planets at the north bending to be easily manifest. And on the next slide is today's chart. We are just about halfway between eclipses. So the sun over here is at the bendings, or halfway between the nodes. The sun is square the nodes, or it will be in a couple of days. This is a time that I think of as a turning point, sometimes a crossroads or a decision-making time. How am I going to move forward? And so I've indicated here, starting at the north node, and this wavy little circle that I drew around here, going 270 degrees all the way around. The sun is right here, puts it at the north bending. So we are looking forward toward the north node in Leo to open our hearts and lead us to what's in our highest and best interest. And then on the next slide, I want to show you my progress chart, because I thought this was kind of interesting that today, here is the transiting sun conjunct my progressed sun, square the nodes, and the north node is just about the place where the eclipse will take place next August in Leo, conjunct my Pluto. Tomorrow, I'm participating in a group printmaker show that will include some of my recent art on the next slide, including 3 monotypes of my fur babies who have passed on to the spirit world. This all seems to be helping me to find my second house, Pluto in Leo, creative voice. So I want to hear from you guys. Comments, questions? What time is it? Ah, we're good.
Oh, thank you. I love your artwork. And it was very interesting.
Thanks, Lauren.
You're welcome.
Super cool. Super cool. So I started looking at all of mine, right?
Of course.
That's what we do.
What we do. And there are so many of them.
Yeah.
I mean, you can pick, you can start. What I love about, and if anybody wants me to, I have the book here and I can look and see, you know, to give you a starting point. Bernadette Brady's book has a great list in the back of all the eclipses on each degree. So it helps. So what did you find?
Well, my prenatal eclipse Saros Series is 155. So that's what made me think, isn't that mine? And I went jumping in. And then I found that the moon, I get repetitive eclipses on my moon and on my Mercury. And my Mercury is my skip step.
Ah.
So I was thinking, how cool is that, right?
Yeah, yeah. And so it probably brings into the focus working on that skip step.
Yes.
What I thought was really interesting of how the weaving of the Saros cycles. It's like, you know, you start with one and then it adds another one and then it adds another one, and then pretty soon, like with me, what I called Act 4, all of the series are all intertwined.
Yeah, super cool. Thank you, Sue.
Sure. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening. This is the book. Oh, wait, I have to turn my video on to do it if I'm going to do that. This is the book. Oh, do you guys see it backwards? I see it backwards.
Oh, it's perfect.
It's perfect. Okay. Bernadette Brady, Predictive Astrology. And if anybody wants me to look up any of them, I'm happy to do it. I don't know how much time do we have, Linda? You want to come up here? Come on.
3 minutes.
Can you show the book again for us, Sue? But do it with
okay.
the faces up there.
Okay, how's that? There. How's that?
Predictive Astrology, the Eagle and the Lark. Got it.
Yeah, and I did put it on my references at the beginning, so you can see it.
Well, now I know why you have
Thank
all
you all.
those Virgo planets too. That's amazing, all the details. You love that kind of thing, eh?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh boy, I could never do that. Wow, that's amazing.
Well, I think the Virgo combined with the Scorpio, the Virgo has now progressed into Scorpio for one thing, and has joined my Mars and Scorpio. I love digging into this stuff, and I love, getting all the details, and then Palace is right there. Wow. I wonder if anybody else would think this interesting. So does anybody want me to look up an eclipse degree real quick before we end?
I just wanted to say thank you, Sue. This was really amazing. I have to go back and look at it again. But I think you may have unearthed something that's kind of fuzzy, been fuzzy for me quite a while ago. One of the dates of the eclipses that you showed. Yeah.
Cool. Well, let me know if I can clarify anything, or if you want more information on any of these.
Definitely, you'll be our eclipse expert. How's that?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'll be your eclipse reference. How's that?
That'd be great.
Reference librarian or something.
Oh. Okay, anyone, any final comments or questions? Okay, Sue, thank you so much for all the hard work.
Thank you.
Very enlightening, very interesting, and thanks from all of us, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sue. Love it.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Sue.
Bye.
Thanks, Sue.